Hey y'all, I'm Brooklyn, your friendly neighborhood witch, and today I have a microphone. No, today I'm going to be giving some tips for beginner witches, some things that maybe I wish folks would have told me, and also some things that I take into consideration even to this day. But this is going to be kind of a longer form video, much like the Why I'm a Witch video. Y'all seem to like those, so yeah, grab a cup of coffee, some snacks, do some chores, do some laundry, you know the drill, while you kick back and listen, because it's just going to be a talking head video. First thing is first, research before casting any spells. I understand when you first are getting started, it is so exciting. Well, at least for me it was. Especially when you're looking online all the time at all these different photos and you know, the beautiful witchcraft aesthetic and all of that. Or maybe you're angry and you're like, I'm gonna cast a spell on somebody. And also I would just highly recommend that you don't operate from a space of intense emotion or anger, or at least like if you're not balanced in that, you know what I'm saying? And especially if you haven't divined on it first, which again, all this falls under the umbrella of do your research before casting any spells, because with this you will learn, like how I've just said, that for example, you need to do divination before you do any spells to make sure that whatever you are doing is actually balancing the scales and not going to offset it, and that you won't inadvertently fuck yourself over. So that is a huge example of why it's important to research. Also, you might start out thinking that I need to jinx this person or cross them or whatever, and then find out like, no, I just need to banish them from my life and cut the cord and be done. There's no need to put any stumbling blocks in their path. There's no reason to take it out on them, what have you. I just need to cut them out because it's not conducive for my well-being. I see this a lot too with people with love spells and all of that, where they really, really, really want someone to love them. They don't want to be alone. They want a partner. Look, I get it. I understand. But if you don't do your research before casting any type of love spell, you might end up getting more than you bargained for. So research before doing any spells. Within that, you will also learn why it's important to be grounded and why it's important to do grounding work, why it's crucial to do protection work, why it's important to know your roots if you're, incorporating herbs into your craft. Understand why we use them and what they're used for and how that works. 2, you don't need to consume. You do not have to come to the craft from a consumerist mentality. In fact, I think that it's very easy, especially when you're on Instagram or any social media platform, TikTok, what have you, to see these beautiful displays of others in their craft and how it looks for them. But I can tell you, myself included, oftentimes that's not even how it looks. The craft is very messy. I've said this before. So a lot of what you're seeing, first of all, is propped up a certain way to look a certain way. I do it too for my shop, but I also make it known that most of the time I have incense dust all over. I have activated charcoal everywhere from lighting loose incense. I've got herbs that are all over. I have things that I need to pick up and clean up, and anyway, the whole nine. It doesn't always look that way. And so that being said, it can be easy to see all this with other people online and think that I need to consume, I need all the crystals, I need all the herbs, I need a big apothecary, all of that. However, you don't need all of it. I'm of the mindset that, and I'll preface it by saying this, depending on your craft and your practice, what tradition you subscribe to, what have you, for mine, all I need is me. and my conviction and my intention. That has proven to work for me in my craft, so I can only speak for myself personally, and others that subscribe to that as well, that has worked for. And so that being said, much of the workings that I do, I go out and I forage. So where I am at in Georgia, there are pine trees everywhere. Pine is an amazing herbal ally. Amazing. And it's right there. Like I see a couple of them right out there, like I can go grab, and I do that very often. You know, I always leave like an offering afterwards, whether it be singing it a song or what have you. But the point is, you can often go forage for your own herbs. You can maybe trade with a neighbor who is maybe growing some herbs that you want. You can grow your own. There's nothing more beautiful to me than growing your own herbs, having your own little garden, even if they're in little potter planters. Like it doesn't have to be like a whole big garden. But the point is that you don't have to like purchase all of these things. At least not to begin with. If you want to do that later on, that's totally fine. But I think sometimes it can become too much of a consumerist mindset and less of a spiritual mindset or magical mindset, connecting mindset. So for example, when I first started, I started out with Wicca. I have since probably about 5-6 years ago transitioned away from that and no longer practice that. However, it was a huge foundational building block for me, and it really helped usher me into the path that I practice now. And so when I first started with Wicca, I will never forget, I went out and I like purchased everything, like everything that it said you needed for your altar, the cloths and the athame and yada yada yada. And I purchased this pentacle wooden block to do my spell workings on, and I don't use that at all anymore. I think I only used that like for a couple months before I just resorted to working outside on the ground or at a different space, but I don't even use it anymore. And so it was not a waste of money, but it was a way that if I would have just pump the brakes a little bit, I could have saved money, you know, not purchasing things that I only use for like a millisecond in time. You know, it wasn't a waste. It wasn't wrong. It wasn't incorrect, but it wasn't really needed, at least not in the beginning. I would recommend you just research to start and see what path speaks to you and resonates with you and what's calling you, before just diving in head first. Number 3, DIY. I might be shooting myself in the foot saying this because I own an online metaphysical shop, but I also would be disingenuous as to say that you have to consume everything. So I'm not going to say that. So for example, this chalice was gifted to me by a very good friend. We have matching chalices. I have a set of 2 and he has a set of 2. And I just added all I have at the house. I don't know if you can see, but there's Himalayan sea salt in there. You can use sand or salt just in general, but all I had was Himalayan sea salt and it works just fine. But anyway, now that is an incense burner. I put a little charcoal disc on it, after I've lit it, and then I sprinkle my loose incense on it, and now I have an incense burner. Didn't have to go purchase it. It was something someone had already gifted me. But even if you weren't gifted something, you can go thrifting and find bowls, or if you want to be extra like me, chalices, and add some salt or sand or what have you, and you have yourself an incense burner. You don't have to purchase a ton of things, especially when you're first getting started out. Again, if you want to do that later on, it's your prerogative and you do you, but a lot of this stuff can just be thrifted or repurposed with things that you already have or were gifted. Number 4, I think I might have touched on this a little bit previously in the video, but ask why. Read why. I saw this on a TikTok on my For You page. It was a tip to a beginner witch, and I just wanted to reiterate that, and I wish I could remember the name, of the TikToker, but I don't remember, and if I find it, I'll put it in the description. But it is a huge question to ask, and I know I already said this earlier on in the video, but know why you use the herbs you do, why you do certain rituals that you do, why it's certain directions, you know, why up and down, or head to, you know, toe, or toe to head, or counterclockwise versus clockwise. All of these things, know why, because when you know why you are doing something in the practice, in the craft, your outcomes will be better informed because you are more informed. Like, for example, when I am making incense, I had to learn the fundamentals of it all and why I use DPG sometimes and why I don't sometimes. Why do I need to use mako powder? Well, because it's not only a great binding agent for the two herbs, because the herbs can't just be, they can't exist on their own and be able to be rolled into an incense without the mako powder, because the mako allows it to bind together and turn into this dough-like texture, and it's a combustible agent, so it allows the herbs to it allows the whole incense stick to light, so it can burn all the way down evenly, and so everything can stay together, and so it's easier to roll. Anyway, so there is a good example of why it's important for me to understand why that works, because now when I go to make different incenses that are a different blend, I'm not using the same herbs, what have you, I know the foundational building blocks to make sure that that final result of that incense cone or stick is going to work and it's going to be there. So in the same vein, when I understand why I use certain directional correspondences or herbal allies, I am better able to make sure that those building blocks are there so that the outcome is what it needs to be. Okay, so I think this 5, know the history of the path you choose and make sure that who you are learning it from are people that are either from that culture or have, well, I would just leave it there. I would say it's important, especially with certain specific practices like hoodoo, voodoo, brujeria, santeria, to make sure you are learning from people of that culture, because when you look at the history of what all those people had to go through to even practice what they practice, it is important to have respect for those ancestors and to have reverence for everything that each and one of those folks had to go through in order to practice their practice, in order to usher the way in for you, to set the foundation and pave the way for us now. We would not have those practices if it weren't for those people and those cultures. And so the very least we can do as people that are trying to learn about that or practice it is to make sure that we are informed and we are respectful and that we are doing our research and we are learning from those of the culture, and also that we are putting money back into those cultures in which we are pulling from or learning from. You know, there is this conversation online of gatekeeping, which I do not like. I don't like this self-aggrandizing pedestal, you're doing it wrong, I know more than you, backhanded comments, whatever. So don't get me wrong, I do not appreciate that. But there is a difference between gatekeeping and making sure that when something comes from a specific culture, that we are being respectful of that culture and that we are not only learning from those of the culture, but that we are also putting energy and resources back into those cultures that allowed us to have this tool, this modality. It is important. It is the very least that we can do. So yeah, just learn your history, no matter what practice you're doing or what path you're in, because it's just only going to contribute to your connection to your path and your practice and your craft. The more you know, the better you'll do. When you know better, you do better. So I'm gonna leave you with 2 more things. 1, okay, I feel like there's a spider on me. No, okay. I mean, that's fine, but just like, can you sit on my lap or something and not on my head? Anyway, have a spell journal. It'll be incredibly helpful for you, especially if you do a working and it works. It would really suck, and I've done this before, if you didn't write it down, because then you wouldn't be able to refer back to it at a later time when you needed it, you know. 2, be gentle with yourself, be patient, pace yourself. We are all learning. I'm still researching and reading to this day. In fact, continue to, even when you feel like you're no longer a novice and like you got this, continue to research, continue to learn. It can be really easy to be disheartened when things don't work out the way you want them, or start to feel like an imposter, have that imposter syndrome. It can be easy sometimes to fall off and feel like you're being too intense with having to be in this spiritual headspace all the time, where it almost like can ruin it for you or taint it for you. So I think that's why one of the bigger tips I would give is to be gentle with yourself and to pace yourself. You are doing just fine. You've got this. If you need to take a little spiritual rest stop breather, where maybe you're not consuming as much literature and information on the topic, and you want to go into something different like folklore or sci-fi fantasy books or whatever, do that. Because also in a lot of folklore, there's a lot of magic in that, and it can inadvertently be helpful for you in some way for your craft, and all while simultaneously giving you a little break and a little breather. It can get a little overwhelming. So be gentle with yourself, pace yourself. You've got this. The sun is going down. I will talk to y'all later. Bye.